In 2024, who should not or which DevTools startup should not try and build a developer community?
That's, for DevTools startup, like your customers are the developer, like your customer is a developer, right? Or the citizen developer. And so that you always need to build some sorts of community. Like now, if you really dissect that problem, right? Like there's a couple things at play. Eventually you need to sell something, right? You need to get money somehow. And so if looking at, like, this is the typical technical marketing thing, crossing the chasm, the early adopters, the laggards and whatnot, and within the spectrum. When you're selling to one group or the other, like your sales tactic has to be different. Because those people, like folks you're selling to, like have a different mindset. Like the early adopters, like the pioneers will like something because it's novel and like they're learning and pushing the envelope, versus like the laggards don't want to take the risk, but they need comfort at night, to kind of go through. And so, like with developer tools, when you're selling into it, it's like you gotta look at two things, like who will eventually make the purchase. Is it a platform engineering team? Is it a tools team? Is it the individual engineering teams making the purchase? Or is it the other way, like kind of the zero interest rate, my favorite word, like growth at all costs. If we have a bunch of users, eventually someone will convert, right? Like that was the old SaaS model. We have, 10% of our users, if we have 100 people, 10 will pay. Like that's the old thinking, right? Even though it sounds modern, it's still like, hey, you need to provide value for them. So just growing a community just because, like, you need to be building a funnel for monetization. Like that's what it's there for. Um, Everybody needs one. Like the kind of the end thing. I know it's like a long-winded answer. Like people buy for things that they trust, right? Like if I was using something for free, like my level of support, like my willing to pay is if I can trust somebody uh to uh to pay. The the community is important because it helps, like, hey, more than one person's using this, or like I'm not alone in this journey, or like, hey, there's like people who are like passionate about this. And so it goes back to like the vitality of like open source, right? And so it goes back to, hey, or vitality of a project, right? Like, hey, dev tool, like I can't be the only person doing this, like then I look silly. Or like, hey, there's other people who use it. We're, as I'm putting on more of an executive hat now, like I can find resources that know this tool. I don't have to find one person in San Francisco versus like, hey, you know what, living in the East Coast, there's a dozen people here who know it plus, so it's good. That's why community is important. It kind of moves everybody forward at the same time.